Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to take on a reel on how to reinstall or how to rebuild a reel. In this case, it's the TLD Star, and most of the time you'll see me do a video where it's take apart, clean, replace, lube, reassemble a reel. But in this case, this reel came in a bag. So when it comes in as a parts, I don't want to say basket case, but when it comes in as a parts type of a situation, there's no way I'm going to put it together to take it apart again. So what you're going to see here is how to reinstall the reel, how to lube it, and how to make it work properly. So this reel, I think, began as a project from a viewer out there, and something went awry. I don't know what that is, and they asked me if I could put it back together for them, and that's what we're going to do here. So the first thing you want to do, and this is the wrong schematic, I'm going to apologize, but it is a TLD 25, but it's the lever drag version. You want to go out, and if you have any doubts about whether all the pieces and parts are there, go grab the schematic and make a checklist. Check off all of the pieces and parts. Now I did a quick scan here by eye. I think we've got them all. If we get stalled along the way, then we'll go do exactly what I'm recommending there and get that piece. So go get your schematic. This one came from Mike's Reel Repair, but there are other sites that do have schematic for the Shimanos. And then what I did here was I actually used that ultrasonic cleaner that we showed on another episode, and for the most part I cleaned it up. The one that didn't clean well is because of pitting. It's the spool. They had a line on here that I would think was probably on this reel for several years. It appears that it's never been washed off, and what we have here is we have pitting and we have ingrained salt that even a couple of runs through the ultrasonic cleaner couldn't get it all. But what I've managed to do is scrape it off the sides so you don't wear the line any more than necessary, and do the best we could in terms of cleaning it up. And that included some scraping with a utility knife, some elbow grease with some steel wool, some metal cleaner and polish. So there's a lot of things I did, and this is the best that we can do at the moment. Okay, so let's go back then and assume that you've got a reel similar to this one, and you want to go and make sure that it's ready for the next season. So clean it up. That's what we did. I've got an internal bearing here. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to oil. I'm going to use a fishing reel oil for that, Reel X. And we're just going to grab the spool because it had to come out of the back side. We're going to go ahead and put the spool in. And again, I can't do much with the other side. I'm going to put some lubrication onto the back end of the spool. I'm going to use a reel grease. In this case, it's Penn's reel grease. Again, it doesn't have to be manufacturer specific, but it should be a fishing reel grease. Just going to put it onto the stud there. That stud is going to ride into this bushing, not a bearing, a bushing, in the back case. So you can put a little bit of grease there. Also, doesn't hurt to put a little bit of grease onto the click mechanism, and then we can close this up. So we're going to take the side plate, align the studs. Generally, if you have a question about how the side plate goes with that decal, usually kind of perpendicular to the reel stand. I separated these 4 screws. I think these are the 4 screws for the side plate. They are a machine screw, not a threaded one. It's a Phillips head screwdriver, so make sure you have those at hand, and just tighten those on down. And this is a good time while we're doing this to tell you that latex glove on my hand is kind of a second nature to me now. I try to keep chemicals and stuff off the hand as much as possible. Those of you that haven't watched the video before know I don't wear one on my right hand. I'm right-handed, and I have trouble working with small pieces and parts. If I have that glove on, that's an unfortunate thing. But I figure half is better than none, and this seems to be the one I do all the cleaning with anyway, the left hand. The other thing you'll notice is I don't use a mechanical screwdriver. I don't like mechanical screwdrivers for graphite reels. It can break the case with the torque that's in them. but if you need to use them, leave those screws short and then come back in and set yourself up accordingly. Okay, next thing up then, we're going to work on the internal pieces. We have a anti-reverse clutch mechanism that comes on here. Sits on the bottom. There's a square on the post. You want to make sure it's seated into the square. I was lucky enough to find this intact. We have a spring and the anti-reverse dog. The anti-reverse dog rides on the stud, and then that little spring goes on this stud over here. So I'm going to use just a little carpenter's awl to kind of swing that over the post. And then I want to reset this. So that's how your anti-reverse mechanism goes. You'll see as you turn the reel one direction, it's free. As you go to back up, it locks into that groove. So that's your anti-reverse. Now we'll come up, and the next piece up then is the main gear. So the main gear has 3 sets of washers in it. Let's see if we can pull this one up. There we go. This one is a fabric washer. This one can get reel grease on it. I use Cal's Universal reel and dry grease for that. I'm cleaning out the interior here. I'm going to go set the... Actually, I want to put the other piece in. I always have trouble with some of these on the yoke mechanisms. I'm never sure if the yoke needs to go in before or after on some of these setups that are built off of the main frame. An Abu would be an example. I just sometimes I'll start putting that main gear in and find out that you had to install the spool gear first. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to work that and make sure that I have the gear set. Springs go on. I put the springs on backwards. Again, schematics would help. I'm kind of being bold here, thinking I know where I'm going with this. Spring on next. That's going to hold the case. Also going to take the jack. The jack is going to slide underneath, so I just want to put a little bit of lube onto the jack. And that'll slide in that channel there. That looks good. Now we'll take the main gear. There's a washer underneath the main gear as well. I'll sit that right on there. Just clean off the bottom of the main gear here. Grab a paper towel and make sure I don't leave any residue on that main gear. I guess I can tear it off, that little rascal there. Okay, main gear will go on next then. I'm going to put Cal's Universal dry grease onto the 2 that have the fabric coating on them. This is the dry grease. I just typically will just take a little bit on there, use my gloved hand as a tool this time, wipe the grease on both sides, and then use that paper towel that I have in my hand conveniently to wipe off any excess on the dry washer. This is just to keep the dry washer flexible without over lubing it and having it squeeze out all over the place. Okay, that's drag 1. These metal plates are clear. That's the next one up then, is the drag washer for that. Second one is a hard washer. So you don't do anything with the hard washer. You just simply reinstall, making sure it's clean. Then we have the eared washer. That's the 2 with the points on it. They go over the top of that one. And they sit in the recesses as well. And then the last one, like the first, is that fabric washer. Now this one doesn't have the points on it. And again, we'll do the same thing here. This has a smaller hole as well. I'm just going to wipe off the excess. We'll place that washer on there. The last of the metal washers then. And there's 2 sides to this. There's an up and a down side. The up side goes out. And then we have 4 caps or tension screws. Tension washers. These are concave. So these washers do not lay flat. There's a hump in them, and you can increase or decrease the tension on the star adjuster by positioning these different ways. I have these face to face. If you nested them, that's your least amount of tension. If you go face to face with them, that's the most. And I noticed most of the time when I have pairs of these, they go face to face, and in the middle they're opposites. So you'll see when I pick this up that there's a space in the middle here. That's because of the way that these are seated. And then the last part up on this one is oops, I think I got one in between here. I'm kind of starting ahead of myself or not. There's a little washer here that protects the bottom of the bearing, so let me get this off. Put that washer on and put the bearing on. And that should be it for this drag stack. And just check, okay, we have one more washer in here. That would be the washer that goes on the top of the bearing. Okay, just wanted to reset my camera for a close-up shot on this. Let's go ahead. We'll give this one more spin, make sure everything's working before we cover this up. This is what we're doing here, making sure everything turns properly. We're going to grab the case now. I'm going to move that jack all the way up top. I'm going to move the stud to the upper position, which is here. And then we're just simply going to try and mate the two together. Sometimes you have to move that stud a little bit just to make sure that you have the complete function. There we go. We should be nice and tight on the case seal, which we are. I'm going to go grab those long screws, place those together. There's 4 of them. And I like to do this in kind of a north, south, east, west pattern here, just to make sure that I keep the tension onto the case at all times. Again, I'm not using a mechanical screwdriver here. If you need one, if you don't have the hand strength, you can use one, but leave it short. And by leaving it short, I mean don't finish that screw off there. You'll see. Let's go do this one and I'll show you where short is. Short's about there. Just maybe you can get a fingernail behind it or something, but not that it's compressed down completely. Leave about a turn. And that way what will happen with this is that you'll be able to not over tense the screw and possibly shatter the case, or worse, kind of just sort of. All right, so we've got to run. Need to put some drags together on that one, so let's go grab the drag. This is your star adjuster. Don't force anything, make sure that you get it right. There goes the little adjuster nut. There's that little washer that just popped out there. Put that on. You see that we have a beautiful free spinning reel. So the good news here was that all the parts that were kind of given up there were not lost. Okay, handle goes on next. There's no tension washer. Go ahead and grab the handle, grab the handle nut cap. This is another one. You just need to be careful about this one. You don't want to over tighten this one or cross strip it. So you want to make sure you're on the threads as you go ahead and bring this down. Seems like maybe we're going. I think we got it. This is a 10mm nut. Seems like everything's kind of working the way it should. It feels a little odd there, but it is progressing down the shaft, so Usually you can screw these on, but for some reason I'm just getting it a little bit tight on one portion of the turn. Not sure what that is. All reels seem to have something a little quirky in them. So this is a nice reel. The reel's, I'm going to guess, about 20 years old. The Triton series has been around a while. Then they were discontinued. Okay, so this one has a broken collar that holds the nut. I'll put it on anyway. Half is better than none, I suspect. I'm thinking that the nut here should be enough to hold that cap if the nut is wrong. And here's the beauty of a parts tray. I was just looking in there to see if I was complete, and I'm not complete. I have those two little screws there. Those two little screws are case screws that belong in the back here. So how do you like that? So this is kind of practice what you preach. There's a reason for my madness in terms of parts trays and latex gloves and things like that. It's learned from experience. I've been doing this for a long time now. And sometimes you just learn that take the extra step and it'll save you 5 steps later on. So there you go. Now I got an empty basket where I had nothing but parts before. Actually, I have 2 empty baskets. I used the 2. They're only bottoms of milk jugs, but they serve well. And let's just go ahead and, well, we've got quite a reel there. It's a shame that we have some of that salt corrosion and buildup there. There's a little bit of play in the spool. You can adjust that with the spool tensioner. You don't want it overly tight, but this one's ready to go fishing again. The monofilament will hide the salt buildup, but it'll go back to its owner with a recommendation to wash this reel off with fresh water after every use, and to change that line out at the end of the year. Monofilament's cheap. There's no reason why you should have monofilament on a reel for more than 1 season. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed how to take a reel that came in parts, a Shimano TLD 25 star, and put it back together. So thank you for watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.